Luna arrived on the 30th floor of the corporate building with clothes dirty from grease, torn sneakers leaving trails of dirt on the imported carpet, and disheveled hair falling over brown eyes that tried to hide her fear. The executives laughed when they saw her, pointing at her old clothes as if she were an exotic animal that had invaded their territory. But none of them imagined that this scrawny 10-year-old girl held a secret capable of silencing the entire room and transforming mockery into reverence. The conference hall of Mendez Incorporations occupied the entire 30th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that displayed Sao Paulo as an infinite carpet of lights and concrete. The white Italian marble with golden veins reflected the baccarat crystal chandeliers hanging from the very high ceiling, each costing more than an economy car. The polished mahogany table, specially brought from Indonesia, seemed more valuable than the entire street where Luna lived. She stopped at the frosted glass door, her eyes scanning the environment with a mixture of awe and determination that fought against the trembling in her legs. She held a worn and patched backpack against her thin chest, her small fingers stained with machine oil and black grease. In the center of the room, surrounded by 12 men and women wearing suits that cost entire salaries, stood Dr. Ricardo Mendez, CEO of the company and one of the richest men in Brazil. 50 years old, gray hair perfectly combed with imported gel, an upright posture that screamed power, and a Patek Philippe watch on his wrist worth more than the house where Luna was born. Beside him, on a black marble pedestal covered with a red velvet cloth, was the reason for all this corporate circus, an antique safe that no one had been able to open for 6 long and frustrating months. The tension in the air was so palpable it seemed to suffocate any hope. "This is the expert you brought, Carla?" Dr. Mendez raised a perfectly groomed eyebrow, looking at his assistant with a mixture of disbelief and poorly disguised irritation. "A child? Are you kidding me?" Carla Andrade, an elegant 35-year-old woman with an MBA from Columbia and 10 years of impeccable service at the company, swallowed hard. Her hands trembled imperceptibly as she held her Italian leather briefcase. "Sir, I explained on the phone that she's different. Her father worked with..." "Her father is a drunk, unemployed locksmith who abandoned the family 3 years ago," interrupted Marcos Tavares, the financial director, a robust 42-year-old man with a laugh that sounded like a bark. He slammed the table, making his Mont Blanc pen roll. "I researched everything about this family. Can you believe this? We're going to trust a safe with documents worth 100 million reais to a girl who lives in a favela." Luna clutched her backpack tighter, feeling the old seam's protest. Her eyes remained fixed on the covered safe, refusing to look at the mocking faces around her. She could feel every disdainful look burning her skin like embers. "Look, dear." Dr. Mendez approached, his handmade Italian leather shoes echoing on the marble with a sound like a countdown. Each step was calculated, intimidating. "I don't know what game this is, but this is a serious company, one of the largest developers in the country. We have shareholders, a board of directors, a reputation. And you want me to believe that a child will solve a problem that has challenged the world's best experts? Experts who charged a fortune and couldn't even open a screw," murmured Helena Costa, the legal director, a woman with hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked painful. She adjusted her Armani glasses and leafed through a report. 300,000 euros for the German, $200,000 for the Swiss, and that Japanese man who charged in gold. "Exactly," Dr. Mendez exploded, turning to Luna again. His cheeks were red with frustration. "And now you want me to believe that a 10-year-old girl, with clothes dirty from grease and smelling of motor oil, will accomplish what engineers with PhDs, experts with 40 years of experience, and even that Russian genius couldn't?" "Ricardo, with all due respect," Deborah Fonseca, the marketing director, a 40-year-old woman with a permanently ironic smile, leaned back in her chair. "This is ridiculous. If someone from the press finds out we brought a child from the favela to try to open a safe of inestimable value, we'll become a national joke." "We're already a joke," grumbled Antonio Luz, the operations director. 6 months without being able to open that damn metal box. The competitors are loving it." Luna finally spoke, her voice low but surprisingly firm for someone so small and frightened. "My grandmother is in the hospital. She needs urgent heart surgery that costs a lot of money. The doctor said if I don't pay by tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, they'll transfer her to the hallway, and she might not survive the night." An uncomfortable silence took over the room. Some executives looked away. Others checked their phones, pretending not to have heard. "That's very sad, child, it really is," Marcos said with a voice that carried no genuine compassion. "But what does that have to do with Dr. Mendez's safe? Do you want us to donate money for your grandmother? Is that it? Because if so, there are proper forms for requesting philanthropic donations." "No," Luna interrupted, her voice trembling now. "You said it on the radio. On yesterday morning's program, at 9:15. You said you'd give 10 million reais to whoever could open the safe. I need that money." Laughter exploded through the room like fireworks. Marcos slammed the table so hard his coffee splashed on the polished surface. Deborah held her stomach, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. Even Helena, always serious, let a smile escape. My God, she really thought it was serious. Marcos wiped away tears, breathing with difficulty. That was a marketing strategy, a publicity hook to generate free media. You really, honestly thought someone would give 10 million reais, just like that for free? The naivete of these people is impressive. Deborah shook her head, still laughing. Dear, companies don't give money. Companies make money. That's basic. Even a child should know that. Well, apparently this child doesn't know. Antonio joined the laughter. Dr. Mendez raised his hand, asking for silence, but there was a smile playing at the corners of his lips. A cruel smile he didn't even try to completely hide. Marcos, Deborah, contain yourselves. Let's have a minimum of decorum here. He turned to Luna, crossing his arms over his chest. Well, little one, since you came all this way, since you believed in our offer, why not? Let's put on a little show to liven up the afternoon. Carla, cancel my 3 o'clock meeting. This will be more fun. Sir, Carla hesitated. You heard me. Let's give the girl a chance. If she can open the safe. He made a dramatic pause, looking at the other executives with a complicit smile. I'll really give her the 10 million reais. Every cent into her account. More low laughter around the room. But, Dr. Mendez continued, his index finger raised. When you fail, and you will fail, dear, make no mistake about it. I want you to leave here, go back to your favela, and never again try to use your grandmother's suffering to get easy money. Deal. Luna felt tears burn her eyes, but held them back forcefully. She wouldn't cry in front of these people, wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Deal, she whispered. Great. Helena, remove the cloth. Let's see our junior expert in action. Anyone want to place bets on how long she'll take to give up? 2 minutes, Marcos said immediately. I'll give her 5. She looks stubborn. Deborah counterbet. 10 minutes, Antonio offered. She came all the way here. Must have some stubbornness. Helena Costa, always pragmatic, stood and walked to the pedestal with her high heels, clicking on the marble. With a dramatic movement, as if revealing a work of art at an auction, she pulled the red velvet cloth. The fabric slid smoothly, falling in red waves on the floor. The safe was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, all in solid bronze hand-worked with intricate reliefs of Chinese dragons that seemed to dance around the metal. Their scales were so detailed they looked real. Their claws seemed sharp even though they were just molded metal. The safe was almost a meter tall and seemed to weigh half a ton, firmly seated on a rotating base. The central lock was a symphony of mechanical complexity. 3 large rotating discs, each covered with ancient Chinese symbols that no one in the room could read, let alone decipher. Between the discs, small visible gears turned when any disc was touched, suggesting an internal mechanism of impossible precision. Beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Mendez approached the safe and tapped it with his knuckles, producing a hollow, deep sound. This belonged to my grandfather, Enrique Mendez. He bought it at an auction in Hong Kong in 1955 for a fortune. Died in 1985 without ever giving me the combination. Always said that when I was ready, I'd know how to open it. Well, he was wrong. 40 years later, and here we are. He caressed the bronze with a mixture of affection and frustration. Inside this safe are documents that could be worth more than 100 million reis. Property deeds, historical investment certificates, possibly even information about secret bank accounts. My grandfather was a complex, secretive man, and this safe is his last joke on me. Experts from around the world tried. Helena added, reading from her tablet. Klaus Müller from Germany, specialist in antique safes with 43 years of experience. Failed after 3 weeks of attempts. Yuki Tanaka from Japan, master in ancient oriental locks. Failed after 2 months. Viktor Romanov from Russia, who claimed to have opened the Tsar's safe. Failed spectacularly after partially destroying the lock, which cost us another 50,000 reis in repairs. And now we have. Marcos made a dramatic gesture toward Luna, a 10-year-old girl from the favela who learned everything from her drunk father. My father didn't teach me, Luna said quietly. It was my grandfather, and he didn't drink. Oh, pardon me. Marcos made an exaggerated bow. It was the locksmith grandfather from the favela. That completely changes everything. Clearly a misunderstood genius. More laughter. Luna felt her face heat with shame and anger, but forced herself to breathe deeply. Grandfather Pedro always said, Luna, when people laugh at you, it's because they're afraid of what you can do. Show them their right to be afraid. She approached the safe slowly, her old sneakers making a muffled sound on the carpet surrounding the pedestal. She placed her worn backpack on the floor carefully, and everyone in the room could hear the clink of metal tools inside it. Luna knelt before the safe, her small hands touching the cold bronze with reverent, almost religious delicacy. Is she praying? Someone whispered, causing muffled laughter. Maybe she's asking for a miracle. She'll need one, another responded. Luna ignored everything. Her fingers traced the contours of the dragons, feeling each scale, each curve of the metal. She closed her eyes, and immediately she was back in the damp basement of the house where she grew up. Flashback, 3 years ago, Grandpa. Why is this safe so beautiful if no one can see it? Grandfather Pedro, a 72-year-old man with calloused hands and gentle eyes, smiled while cleaning an old safe that someone had brought him to restore. Luna, my little granddaughter, a safe isn't made to be seen. It's made to be felt. Each curve, each detail, tells a story about who made it and why. He guided Luna's small hands over the metal. Feel these marks here? This was made by hand, with simple tools, by someone who loved what they did. Each hammer strike was a prayer. Each polish was a meditation. But how does that help open the safe? Pedro laughed softly. Because when you understand the soul of the Creator, you understand their logic. You understand how they thought, what they valued. And then, the safe is no longer an enemy. It's a friend trying to tell you a secret. End of flashback. Luna opened her eyes. Her hands still rested on the bronze dragons. She could feel something, an intention, a pattern in the metal that no one else had noticed. Aren't you even going to try? Marcos provoked, checking his Rolex ostentatiously. Or are you waiting for the dragons to tell you the combination? Deborah laughed. Maybe she's trying to use telepathy. I read in an article that these kids today think they're special, that they have powers. Whining generation, Antonio agreed. They think they deserve everything without working. Luna opened her backpack. The zipper was broken, so she had to pull carefully not to tear it more. From inside, she took out an old, stained stethoscope, with the rubber tubing cracked in some places and the earpieces worn by time. What's that? Deborah leaned forward. Is she going to give the safe a checkup? See if there's a heart beating in there. Maybe the safe is sick. Marcos slammed the table again, almost knocking over his coffee. It needs medicine. Someone call a safe doctor. The room exploded in laughter. Even the assistants standing at the back of the room, usually silent and invisible, allowed themselves to smile. Luna put the stethoscope in her ears. The cold of the rubber against her skin was familiar, comforting. This had been Grandfather Pedro's stethoscope, used by him for 50 years to listen to the interior of impossible locks. Everyone be quiet. Dr. Mendez suddenly ordered, raising his hand. His voice carried absolute authority. It wasn't a request, it was a command. The room fell instantly silent. Even Marcos closed his mouth, though he still had a mocking smile on his lips. Luna pressed the diaphragm of the stethoscope against the bronze, right next to the central lock. Her fingers touched the first rotating disc with her fingertips, not with force, but with the delicacy of someone caressing something precious. She began to turn the disc. Slowly, so slowly it barely seemed to be moving. Click. She stopped, tilted her head, listening. Click. Turned a bit more. Click. Stopped again. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was slow and controlled. Her entire being was concentrated on the sound coming from inside the safe, a sound only she could hear through the stethoscope. The executives exchanged glances. Some shook their heads with pity. Others checked their phones, already bored with the performance. After all, how long could a child maintain this farce? But Carla watched carefully. There was something different about the girl, something in her movements that suggested not just foolish hope, but real knowledge, confidence, certainty. Luna moved to the second disc, turned in, the opposite direction to the first, counterclockwise, while the first had been clockwise. That doesn't make sense, Helena murmured, adjusting her glasses and looking at her notes. All the experts tried the same direction on all three discs. Clockwise, 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 or counterclockwise, counterclockwise, counterclockwise. It's because she doesn't know what she's doing, Marcos responded aloud, not caring if Luna heard. She's just turning randomly and hoping for luck. But Luna wasn't turning randomly. Each movement was deliberate, measured, responding to something she heard inside the bronze. Flashback, 2.5 years ago, Grandpa. All my friends at school have new cell phones. Why don't we have money for these things? Pedro stopped working on an old lock and looked at his 7-year-old granddaughter with sadness in his eyes. Because Grandpa chose a different path, Luna. I could have worked for big companies, made lots of money, but I would have had to do things that aren't right. Like what? Like creating locks that no one can open. Safes that trap people's money forever. Traps. I could have become rich creating metal prisons. He took her hands between his, so large and calloused compared to her small, soft ones. But I chose to do the opposite. I teach locks to speak. I teach safes to share their secrets. And that doesn't make money, my little granddaughter, but it lets me sleep in peace. Are you happy being poor? Pedro smiled. I'm rich where it matters. I have you. I have your grandmother. I have knowledge that will last generations. Isn't that wealth? Luna, at 7 years old, wasn't sure. Now, at 10, kneeling before a safe that could save her grandmother's life, she finally understood. End of flashback. Luna opened her eyes and moved to the third disc. This one was different from the other two. Harder to turn, more resistant. She applied a bit more pressure. Nothing. Tried the opposite direction. Still nothing. Her heart began to beat faster. What if she couldn't do it? What if all these mockers were right? What if her grandfather's knowledge wasn't enough? It stuck. Marcos announced with obvious joy. She broke it. The girl broke the safe. No. Helena checked with binoculars she had brought. The disc is still intact. She just doesn't know what she's doing. Obviously. Deborah rolled her eyes. How much longer are we going to waste on this? I have real meetings. Dr. Mendez was about to agree when something made him stop. He looked at Luna. Really looked, for the first time since she entered the room. And he saw something in her eyes that made him hesitate. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't panic. It was pure concentration. Luna closed her eyes again and whispered something so low that no one could hear. Grandpa, help me. Please. And then, as if in response, she heard his voice in her mind, as clear as if he were beside her. Ancient Chinese locks don't just use mechanics, Luna. They use music. And all music needs a pause before the final crescendo. Pause. Luna stopped turning the third disc. Waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. She gave up. Marcos started to stand. Then Luna turned the third disc again, not forward, not backward, but upward. She pushed the disc slightly inward while turning, a technique that none of the modern experts had tried because it didn't make mechanical sense. And the safe responded. Clunk. It was a deep, resonant sound coming from inside the bronze. The sound of ancient gears that hadn't moved in decades, finally releasing their grip on the metal. Marcos fell back into his chair. That was... Luna turned the third disc one last time. Click, click, click. And then, the sound no one expected to hear. The sound that seemed impossible after 6 months of failures. Thunk-chunk whir. The internal gears began to turn. It was like hearing a mechanical heart waking after a long sleep. The people closest to the safe could even feel gentle vibrations through the floor. It can't be. Helena stood so fast her chair fell backward with a crash. Impossible, Antonio whispered. Luna opened her eyes. Her hands trembled, not from fear now, but from pure adrenaline. She reached for the side lever of the safe, an ornate piece in the shape of a dragon's head that all the experts had pulled without success. She pulled it. The safe emitted a long, dramatic metallic sigh, as if breathing for the first time in 40 years. Trapped air escaped through small cracks no one knew existed. And then, with a groan of bronze on bronze, the heavy door began to open, inch by inch. The silence in the room was absolute. No one breathed. No one moved. The door opened completely, revealing its interior lined with faded red velvet. And there, organized in perfect stacks and preserved by the hermetic seal, were yellow documents, old black and white photographs, and in the center, illuminated by the room's chandeliers, a large envelope sealed with red wax and the Mendez family crest pressed into it. Dr. Ricardo Mendez stood completely still. His face lost all color. His hands, always so steady in million-dollar negotiations, trembled visibly when he took a step forward. My God, he whispered. His voice was unrecognizable, small, vulnerable, human. He walked to the safe, as if approaching a sacred altar. He passed Luna, without even seeing her, pushing her slightly aside, without intending to be rude. He was simply too shocked to notice. His hands reached for the envelope. He picked it up with as much delicacy as someone would hold a newborn baby. The wax seal broke with a soft crack when he opened it. From inside, he removed several sheets of yellowed paper, written by hand with ink that had faded to a soft brown. But the words were still legible. Dr. Mendez began to read, and as his eyes scanned the lines, something in him changed fundamentally. The first tear fell when he was on the second page. The second fell when he read something that made him release a sound that wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a laugh. It was something in between, something broken and human. Sir, Helena approached hesitantly. What does it say? Dr. Mendez didn't respond immediately. He read the letter a second time, then a third, as if he couldn't believe the words. His hands trembled so much the paper shook. Finally, with a voice choked and eyes red from unshed tears, he turned to Luna. The girl was still kneeling on the floor, holding the old stethoscope, her eyes wide. Who? His voice failed. He cleared his throat and tried again. Who taught you to do this? Luna swallowed hard. My grandfather, Pedro Almeida. He was a locksmith. Dr. Mendez's legs weakened. He had to lean on the safe's pedestal. Pedro Almeida, he repeated, as if the name were a prayer. Pedro Almeida. He looked at the letter in his hands, then at Luna, then at the letter again. That name is here. In this letter my grandfather wrote 50 years ago. The silence in the room was so deep you could hear each person's breathing. My grandfather, Dr. Mendez began, his voice barely able to come out. Enrique Mendez wrote this letter in 1975. He was 60 years old. And he writes. He had to stop, wipe his eyes. He writes that he created this safe with a special mechanism. A mechanism that only one person in the world could open. Who? Marcos asked, his voice without any trace of the previous mockery. A locksmith named Pedro Almeida. Dr. Mendez looked at Luna with an intensity that made her shrink. My grandfather writes that Pedro was the only man he knew with sufficient skill, patience, and pure heart to decipher the musical lock that he himself had designed. Luna felt her heart race. Musical lock. Dr. Mendez nodded, still processing. My grandfather. He was a musician before being a businessman, pianist. And according to this letter, he designed this safe so that only someone who could hear the melody of metal could open it. He thought it was impossible. But then he met your grandfather. He crouched in front of Luna, placing himself at her level. Up close, she could see there were real tears in his eyes now, falling freely down his cheeks. How did you meet? Dr. Mendez looked at the letter. My grandfather writes that in 1972, he was being mugged. Late at night, leaving a restaurant. 3 men with knives wanted his watch, his wallet, everything. And there were witnesses, rich people, businessmen, friends of his, but they all ran. All except one. He paused, pure raw emotion in his voice. A simple locksmith, who was passing by chance. Pedro Almeida. My grandfather writes that Pedro was scrawny, clearly poor, with no reason to risk his life. But he intervened anyway. Luna's eyes widened. Grandpa saved your grandfather? Took a knife to the shoulder for it. Dr. Mendez touched his own shoulder unconsciously. Almost died. Spent 2 weeks in the hospital. And during all that time, my grandfather visited him every day. They talked. They became friends. And my grandfather discovered that Pedro was a genius with locks, completely self-taught, completely unknown, but brilliant. He looked at the safe. Years later, when my grandfather commissioned this safe, he designed it thinking of Pedro. The musical lock. It was based on conversations they had about how locks sing, when you understand them. It was a tribute, a recognition. But why did he never tell you this? Carla asked softly. Dr. Mendez closed his eyes, more tears falling. Because he was ashamed. It's written here. He was ashamed of being saved by a poor man while rich men, including his best friends, ran like cowards. He was ashamed of what that said about him, about his class, about the world he helped build. He opened his eyes and looked at Luna with painful intensity. He wanted to teach me humility. He wanted me to learn that value isn't in money or position. That's why he left the safe for me with a secret combination, hoping I'd seek out Pedro, that I'd learn the lesson that took him 60 years to learn. And you, did you look for him? Luna asked. Dr. Mendez shook his head, shame clear in his eyes. No. My grandfather died when I was 10 your age. He tried to teach me about locks, about mechanics, about patience. But I didn't want to learn. I thought it was boring. I thought it was for poor people, for people without ambition. He paused. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to prove I was better than him. So I became a businessman, built this empire, made all this money. And I never managed to open his safe. Because I never learned the lesson. What lesson? Luna asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Mendez touched her face gently, a gesture so paternal that Luna felt tears burn in her own eyes. That true wealth isn't in what you accumulate. It's in what you share. It's in the skills you pass forward, in the people you touch, in the knowledge you preserve. He stood, helping Luna stand too. His hands held hers firmly. Your grandfather died? Luna nodded, unable to speak. When? 3 years ago. He was 75. His heart stopped. It was quick. Dr. Mendez closed his eyes. And he taught you. Passed his knowledge forward. He did. My mother thought it was a waste of time. Said he should be teaching me useful things, like computers. But I loved being with him in the basement, learning about old locks. Did he teach you to hear the music? Luna nodded. He said each lock sings its own song. You just need to have patience to listen. Dr. Mendez released a sound that was half laugh, half sob. And you heard. You heard the song that neither my grandfather nor I, nor any expert in the world could hear. He turned to the room full of silent and ashamed executives. His voice, when he spoke, carried an authority Luna hadn't heard before. Not the authority of power, but the authority of absolute conviction. How many people in this room mocked this child? He asked. No one answered. I asked, how many of you laughed at her? Hands were slowly raised. Marcos, Deborah, Antonio. Helena kept her hands down, but her eyes were on the floor. Almost all the executives, assistants, and employees present had participated in the mockery. directly or indirectly. She's 10 years old, Dr. Mendez continued, his voice trembling with anger and emotion. 10 years old and accomplished what our 5,000 reis per hour experts, with decades of experience and degrees from expensive universities, couldn't. He pointed to Luna's old clothes. And you laughed at her because of her clothes. Laughed at her for being poor. Laughed at her for coming from a favela. Laughed at her for having hope when you'd already given up. Marcos tried to speak. Sir, Silence, Dr. Mendez roared. Marcos's mouth snapped shut instantly. You laughed at her because she represented everything you despise. Poverty, lack of formal education, humble origins. And by laughing at her, you laughed at my grandfather, who died trying to teach me that these things don't matter. He took a deep breath, trying to control himself. But more important, you laughed at someone who has more talent, more pure skill, and more genuine value than anyone in this room, including me. Absolute silence. Dr. Mendez turned to Carla. You were the only one who believed in her. The only one who had the courage to bring her here, despite my skepticism. Why? Carla swallowed hard. Because Mrs. Beatrice, who cleans our offices, told me about her neighbor's granddaughter. A 10-year-old girl who fixed locks that adult mechanics couldn't. And I thought it was worth trying. That it cost nothing to believe. And you were almost fired for it. Dr. Mendez completed. I remember you asking to bring a special contact, and me saying it was ridiculous. Saying you were wasting my time. Yes, sir. Carla, you're promoted to Vice President of Human Resources, and you'll receive a bonus of 200,000 reis for having had the wisdom, courage, and humanity to see value where we all saw only poverty. Carla's eyes widened, tears beginning to fall. Sir, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just keep being the person you are. He turned to Luna. And you, Luna Almeida, granddaughter of Pedro Almeida, who inherited not just his skills, but also his character. He picked up his phone. The 10 million reis is yours. I'll transfer it today. More than that, I'll personally guarantee your grandmother receives the best cardiac surgery money can buy. I'll call Dr. Alberto Ferreira, Chief of Surgery at São Joaquim Hospital, the best hospital in Latin America. Your grandmother will be operated on by the country's best team. Luna felt her legs weaken. She would have fallen if Dr. Mendez hadn't held her arm. Really? She whispered. Really. Every cent. Every promise. He was already dialing. Alberto. Ricardo Mendez. Yes, I know what time it is. Alberto, I need an urgent favor. No, it's not for me. It's for someone who saved my life. Today. No, I'm not exaggerating. I have a patient who needs emergency cardiac surgery. Maria Almeida, 72 years old. She's at the municipal hospital in the East Zone. Yes, I know you're full. Alberto, I donate 10 million a year to your hospital. I'm asking for one spot. A single spot. Great. Excellent. Can you send an ambulance to pick her up? Full equipment, full team. How much does it cost? Alberto, I don't care how much it costs. Use the money for my donation. Use all of it if necessary. Perfect. And Alberto, I want your best surgeon. I don't want a good surgeon. I want the best. Will you operate yourself? Excellent. Thank you, my friend. I owe you one. He hung up and looked at Luna, who was now crying openly. Tears ran down her dirty face, leaving clean tracks on the skin stained with grease. Your grandmother is being transferred right now. In less than an hour, she'll be in the best room in the best hospital in the city. The surgery will be tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock sharp with Dr. Alberto Ferreira personally. But I can't pay. Luna sobbed. You already paid, Dr. Mendez said softly. You gave me something money can't buy. You gave me the lesson my grandfather died trying to teach me. You showed me I was living my life completely wrong. He knelt in front of her again, holding her shoulders. Luna, do you know why your grandfather never got rich? Luna shook her head. Because he chose to help people instead of exploiting them. Because he passed knowledge forward instead of hoarding it. Because he valued character over capital. Dr. Mendez pointed to the letter. It's written here. My grandfather offered Pedro a job, 50,000 cruzeros a month, a fortune at the time, to work for him, creating impossible-to-open safes. And Grandpa refused. Refused. Said he didn't want to spend his life creating prisons, even if they were made of gold. Said he preferred to teach locks to speak, rather than teach them to be silent. Dr. Mendez smiled through tears. My grandfather wrote that this was the wisest answer he'd ever heard, and he never forgot. He stood, picked up the letter, and read aloud. If you're reading this, Ricardo, it means you finally opened the safe. I hope you sought out Pedro Almeida, as I asked you. I hope you learned from him what took me 60 years to learn, that there are two types of wealth in the world. The wealth we accumulate, which dies with us, and the wealth we share, which lives forever. He folded the letter carefully. Apparently, I didn't seek out Pedro, but he found me anyway. Through you. Luna wiped tears with her dirty sleeve. Grandpa would have liked to know he helped someone, even after dying. He did more than help. He saved. He saved your grandmother through you. He saved my soul through this lesson. And if I have anything to say about it, he'll save many more people still. How? Luna asked. Dr. Mendez thought for a moment. Then his face lit up with a determination Luna recognized, the same expression Grandfather Pedro had when he decided to do something important. Marcos, Dr. Mendez turned to his financial director. I want you to arrange a transfer of 10 million to Luna Almeida. Today. Now. Sir, that will require board authorizations. Then convene the board. And if they refuse, I'll use my own money. But Luna will receive every cent today. Marcos nodded, pale. Yes, sir. Helena, Dr. Mendez continued, I want you to organize all the legal papers. I don't want any vultures trying to take advantage of this family. I want protections, trusts, professional financial consulting, everything. Yes, sir. Deborah. He looked at the marketing director, who looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. You're going to want to do a publicity campaign about this. You're going to want to use Luna's story to promote the company. You will not do that. This family deserves privacy. If I see a single word about this in the press, without their authorization, you're fired. Understood. Deborah nodded quickly. Perfectly, sir. And Antonio. Dr. Mendez turned to the operations director. I want you to find a house for the Almeida family. Not an apartment. A house. With a garden. In a safe neighborhood. Cost doesn't matter. The company will buy and donate it to them. Antonio was writing frantically. Location preferences? Dr. Mendez looked at Luna. Where do you want to live, Luna? Luna blinked, completely overwhelmed. I don't know. I never thought about it. Near a good school, Dr. Mendez decided, and near a good hospital for your grandmother. Antonio, arrange it. Yes, sir. Dr. Mendez took a deep breath, then looked at everyone in the room. And now, all of you are going to learn the same lesson I learned today. We're going to create a foundation, the Pedro Almeida Foundation. Murmurs of surprise around the room. This foundation, Dr. Mendez continued, his voice gaining strength and passion, will teach underprivileged children traditional trades that are being lost. Locksmithing, carpentry, watchmaking, shoemaking, bookbinding. All the arts our society has decided have no value. He pointed to Luna. Because if a 10-year-old girl can master something as complex as ancient locks, imagine what 1,000 children can do if we give them the opportunity. If we give them tools, mentors, and above all, respect. How much are we going to invest? Marcos asked, already doing calculations. 50 million to start, Dr. Mendez said without hesitation. And another 10 million a year in perpetuity. Marcos choked. Sir, it's the price of a soul. Dr. Mendez cut him off. My soul, specifically. And I'd say it's cheap. He turned to Luna. And you, when you grow up, if you want, can run this foundation. Can teach other children what your grandfather taught you. Can preserve this knowledge he passed to you. Luna wiped more tears. I would love to, but I'm only 10 years old. Then you have 8 years to prepare. Dr. Mendez smiled. 8 years to study, to learn, to grow. And when you're ready, The foundation will be waiting. If you want. I want, Luna said with more conviction than she'd felt about anything in her life. I want to honor my grandfather. I want other children to learn what he taught me. Dr. Mendez extended his hand. Luna shook it. It was no longer the handshake of a powerful CEO and a poor child. It was the handshake of two human beings who had just shared something profound and transformative. There's one more thing, Dr. Mendez said, releasing her hand and returning to the safe. He removed the stacks of documents, deeds, certificates, photographs. All these papers are worth a fortune, as I said, but that's not what matters most. He picked up a small object wrapped in black velvet that was at the bottom of the safe. When he unwrapped it, it revealed an antique silver flute, engraved with the same dragons that decorated the safe. This belonged to my grandfather. Dr. Mendez held the flute as if it were a religious object. He was a talented musician before being a businessman. This flute, he used to play it for me when I was a child. New tears fell from his eyes, and I remember begging him to teach me. But he always said, "When you're ready, Ricardo, when you learn to hear music in silence, I'll teach you to create music and sound." He looked at Luna. I never understood what he meant. Until today. Until you. Luna felt confused. I don't understand. You listened, Luna. You heard what no one else could hear. You found music where everyone else only heard silence. Dr. Mendez carefully placed the flute in Luna's hands. This is yours now. Not because of what it's worth, but because you understand what my grandfather was trying to teach. You hear the music. Luna held the silver flute with trembling hands. It was the most beautiful, most valuable thing she'd ever touched in her life. I can't accept this, she whispered. You already have, Dr. Mendez said firmly. Consider it a gift from one grandfather to the granddaughter of another, from Enrique to Pedro, through you and me. Carla approached quietly. Sir, the ambulance is on its way to pick up Mrs. Maria, and the legal team is preparing the paperwork for the transfer. Dr. Mendez nodded. Good. Luna, Carla is going to take you to the hospital to be with your grandmother. Tomorrow, after the surgery, we'll sit down and start planning the foundation. For now, just be with your family. Luna nodded, still holding the flute like a sacred treasure. She stood, picked up her worn backpack, and followed Carla to the door. But she could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her, no longer with mockery, but with respect, with admiration, with shame for how they treated her. At the door, she turned one last time. Dr. Mendez? Yes. Thank you. For believing, even when you didn't believe at first. Dr. Mendez smiled, a genuine, broken, human smile. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to learn, even when the lesson comes from someone you underestimated. Luna left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. In the silence that followed, Dr. Mendez looked at his executives. Everyone avoided his gaze. I want each of you to write a letter of apology to Luna, he said calmly. Personal. Sincere. I don't want corporate apologies. I want you to admit how you treated her and why. And I want you to promise yourselves never again to judge someone by their clothes, origins, or age. No one protested. And if I find out that any of you continues treating inferior people, cleaning staff, security guards, assistants, with less than complete respect, you're fired. It doesn't matter how long you've worked here. It doesn't matter how important you are. This company is going to change. Starting today. Starting with us. Marcos hesitantly raised his hand. Sir, can I ask something? You can. Are you really going to give her 10 million? That wasn't just emotion of the moment. Dr. Mendez looked at him with an intensity that made Marcos shrink. Marcos, how long have you known me? 15 years, sir. In these 15 years, have you ever seen me break a promise? No, sir. Then why do you think I'd start now? Dr. Mendez went to the window, looking at the city below. 10 million is cheap for what Luna gave me. She gave me a second chance. A chance to be the man my grandfather wanted me to be. He turned, and all of you also received a second chance today. The chance to learn that value has nothing to do with price. I hope you take advantage of this chance, because there won't be a third. The meeting was dismissed. The executives left in silence, each lost in their own thoughts and shame. Dr. Mendez stayed alone with the open safe. He picked up his grandfather's letter again and read the last lines. Ricardo, if you're reading this, there's still hope for you. True wealth isn't what's inside this safe. It's the journey you took to open it. It's the humility you learned. It's the respect you gained for others. I hope you find Pedro Almeida. I hope you learn from him. And I hope you pass these lessons forward. With all my love, your grandfather Enrique. Dr. Mendez folded the letter and placed it in the inner pocket of his jacket, close to his heart. I learned, Grandpa, he whispered to the empty room. I finally learned. 3 weeks later, Luna sat beside the hospital bed where her grandmother Maria rested. The room was immense, bigger than their entire house before. It had a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, fresh flowers in every corner delivered every 2 days, and state-of-the-art medical equipment monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. The surgery had been an absolute success. Dr. Alberto Ferreira had personally performed the 6-hour procedure, replacing a defective heart valve with the state-of-the-art titanium artificial valve. Recovery had been faster than expected. Maria was already sitting up, already smiling, already planning the future. I still can't believe it. Maria held Luna's hand, tears shining in her eyes. Happy tears this time. 10 million reis. A new house. All this because you opened a safe. It wasn't just the safe, Grandma, Luna said softly. It was Grandpa Pedro. He planned all this without even knowing. Maria closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were full of remorse. I was so hard on him. So many years complaining that he wasted his life with those old locks. Saying he should be making more money, being more ambitious. You were worried about us. He knew that. But I was wrong, Maria insisted. He wasn't wasting anything. He was building something. Something bigger than money. He was building knowledge, legacy, future. She squeezed Luna's hand. He prepared you for this moment without even knowing this moment would come. How did he do that? Luna thought. I think he wasn't preparing me for this specific moment. He was preparing me for life. Teaching me that if you truly master something, if you love what you do and do it with excellence, opportunities appear. He would have been so proud of you. He is proud, Luna corrected. I know he is. I still feel him with me sometimes. The door opened and Dr. Mendez entered, carrying a bouquet of white roses and a genuine smile that Luna was still getting used to seeing. In the 3 weeks since the safe, he had visited Maria almost every day, always bringing flowers, always asking about the recovery. Dona Maria. He placed the flowers in a new vase. How are you feeling today? Better every day, Ricardo. Maria used his first name now, as he had insisted. The doctors say I can be discharged in 3 days. Great, because I have news. He sat in a chair, his eyes shining with excitement that Luna rarely saw in adults. The Pedro Almeida Foundation is officially established. Registered, funded, operational. So fast. Luna leaned forward. When you have resources and determination, things happen fast. Dr. Mendez laughed. We've already rented a building in the East Zone. 3 floors, completely renovated. The first floor is for locksmiths and metalworkers. The second floor is for carpentry and woodworking. The third floor is for watchmaking and small mechanics. He picked up his tablet and showed photos. Luna and Maria looked wide-eyed at images of spacious, well-lit rooms filled with new tools and professional workbenches. And your grandfather's notebooks, Dr. Mendez continued, sliding to more photos, were professionally digitized. Every page was photographed in high resolution. Every note was preserved. The originals are in a climate-controlled safe at the best bank in Sao Paulo. And the publication? Maria asked. It's in process. We hired a publisher specializing in technical books. They're organizing the notebooks chronologically, adding explanatory illustrations, and translating some parts that were in difficult technical notation. The first volume should be ready in 3 months. He smiled. And we're going to do something special. Every book sold will generate royalties that go directly to the foundation. Pedro's work will continue teaching children long after we're all gone. Luna felt tears burn. Grandpa would have loved this. I'm sure he would. And there's one more thing. Dr. Mendez opened his briefcase and took out a large envelope. Luna, do you remember me mentioning you could study? Yes. Well, I found the perfect school. Colégio Bandeirantes, one of the best private schools in Brazil. They have special programs for gifted children, and when I explained your story, they were eager to have you. He handed her the envelope. Inside was an acceptance letter, a full scholarship, and even a new uniform still packaged. You start in 2 weeks, if you want. No pressure, but I thought you deserved the best education possible. Luna looked at her grandmother, who nodded encouragingly. Luna said. I want to learn everything I can. To honor Grandpa. To be ready for the foundation. Great, Dr. Mendez clapped. And speaking of the foundation, we already have 15 children enrolled for the first course. Basic locksmiths, the art of listening to metal. Listening to metal, Maria repeated. It was Luna's idea, Dr. Mendez explained. When we discussed the curriculum, she said Grandfather Pedro's first lesson was always the same. Learn to listen. So all courses will start with that. Teaching children to have patience, to pay attention, to respect tools and materials. Luna remembered the afternoons in the basement, Grandfather Pedro holding her hands over an old lock, making her close her eyes and just listen. Click means this. Clunk means that. Each sound is a word. You just need to learn the language. And you, Dr. Mendez turned to Luna. Would you like to give the first class? When you feel ready, of course. No pressure. Me. Luna's eyes widened. But I'm 10 years old. Who's going to take me seriously? 15 children who are desperate to learn, Dr. Mendez said with conviction. 15 children who will see you not as a child, but as someone who masters something incredible. As a mentor. Luna thought about this. The idea was scary and exciting at the same time. What if I'm not good at teaching? Then you learn, just like you learned locks. No one is perfect at the beginning. He smiled. And besides, we'll hire experienced teachers to help you. But I want you to be involved. I want these children to see that a 10-year-old girl from a favela can change the world. Because if you can, they can too. Maria wiped tears. Pedro would be so happy to see his work continuing like this. Dr. Mendez became serious. Dona Maria, can I ask something personal? Of course. Do you regret it? Complaining about his work, wanting him to make more money. Maria closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was loaded with emotion. Every day, I think about all the times I complained when he came home late, because he was helping someone for free. All the times I sighed when he brought home a broken lock someone had thrown away, saying he was going to restore it. She opened her eyes. I didn't see that he was living his values. He believed knowledge should be shared, that helping people was more important than profit, and he lived that every single day. But you were worried about the family, Dr. Mendez said gently. I was, and he understood that. Never got angry at me, never judged me. Just kept doing what he loved and hoping that one day I'd understand. Maria looked at Luna. And now I understand. He didn't leave us money, but he left us something better. He left Luna. He left knowledge. He left a legacy that's saving my life and will change hundreds of others. Dr. Mendez nodded. That's why the foundation is so important. It's not just about teaching trades. It's about teaching values. Teaching that you can be poor in money, but rich in purpose. That you can not have diplomas, but have skills that matter. That you can be underestimated by everyone and still change the world. He stood. Well, I'll let you rest. But think about the class, Luna. You don't need to decide now. But when you're ready, the children will be waiting. After he left, Luna and Maria sat in silence for a while. Grandma, Luna finally spoke. Yes, my love. Do you think Grandpa knew that one day all this would happen? Maria thought for a long moment. I don't know if he knew exactly this, but I think he had faith. Faith that if he lived right, if he treated people well, if he passed knowledge forward with love, some good would come from it. And it did. More than he could have imagined. Maria squeezed Luna's hand. You know what he used to say? when I complained about money. What? He'd say, Maria, life is like a complicated lock. You can force it and break it, or you can have patience and learn to open it the right way. Forcing gives quick results, but leaves everything broken. Patience takes longer, but leaves everything whole. Luna smiled. He said things like that. And he was right. I wanted to force, make money fast, have things now. But he chose patience. And look where it led us. They sat together, hands intertwined, looking out the window at the city that stretched below like a carpet of opportunities. 6 months later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, the Pedro Almeida Foundation was having its grand official opening. The event had attracted hundreds of people, politicians wanting photos, businessmen wanting networking, families of enrolled children, and even some celebrities who had heard Luna's story and wanted to support the cause. But Luna barely noticed the crowd. She was on the 3rd floor, in a specially prepared classroom, with 12 children sitting in a semicircle around her, ages ranging from 8 to 15, all from poor families in the region, all with eyes shining with curiosity and hope. Luna, now 11 years old and a few centimeters taller, stood in front of the class. She wore a white lab coat with the name Pedro Almeida Foundation embroidered on the pocket. Her hands, always small but increasingly confident, held an old lock. My grandfather always said, she began, her voice clear and firm, that a lock is like a person. Each one has its own personality, its own way of communicating. The children listened in absolute silence, absorbing every word. Some locks are noisy. They make a lot of sound, want your attention. Others are silent. You need to work hard to hear what they're saying. Luna turned the lock in her hands. And some are liars. They make a sound but want you to do something else. A 12-year-old boy named Miguel raised his hand. How do you know which is which? By practicing. By listening. By failing. Luna smiled. My grandfather gave me my first lock when I was 7. It took me 3 months to open it. 3 months of trying, failing, wanted to give up. But you didn't give up, a 9-year-old girl named Sophia said. I didn't give up. And you know why? Because my grandfather taught me that each failure teaches you something. Each time you try and don't succeed, you learn a way that doesn't work. And eventually, you know so many ways that don't work that the right way becomes obvious. She placed the lock on the table and picked up a stethoscope, not her grandfather's old one, but a new one the foundation had bought. And to listen, you'll need these. But before using the tools, you need to learn to listen with something more important. What? Miguel asked. Luna pointed to her heart. With this, you need to care. You need to respect the lock, respect the process, respect the patience this requires. She looked at each child. How many of you have been underestimated? Have had someone tell you you're not good enough, smart enough, rich enough? All hands went up. Perfect, Luna said, because that means you're like me, like my grandfather, like everyone who ever did something impossible. People underestimated us because they couldn't see what we could become, but we're going to show them. She picked up the old lock again. This lock took me 3 months to open, but when I finally opened it, I learned something more valuable than any lock combination. I learned that when people laugh at you, when they say you can't, when they treat you like you're worthless, they're wrong. Not because you're already perfect, but because you have the ability to become extraordinary. Miguel leaned forward. So we can all be extraordinary. You already are, Luna said simply. You just don't know it yet. My job is to help you discover it. She began the first lesson, teaching the children to hold the stethoscope, to touch the locks with respect, to listen instead of forcing. And as she taught, she felt her grandfather's presence, as clear as if he were standing beside her, smiling with pride. Downstairs, at the official ceremony, Dr. Mendez was giving a speech to the gathered crowd, but he kept glancing up at the 3rd floor, where Luna was doing the real work, where Pedro Almeida's legacy was truly continuing. 10 years later, Luna stood on a stage at the Harvard Business School. She was 21 now, a university student with a double major in social entrepreneurship and mechanical engineering. But more than her academic credentials, She was known as the girl who had transformed social enterprise in Brazil. The Pedro Almeida Foundation now operated in 11 units across Brazil and 3 international locations. More than 2,000 students had passed through the programs. 500 had found employment. 20 had opened their own businesses. And crime rates among young people in the areas where the units operated had dropped 40%. Luna Almeida, the director called her name. She climbed onto the stage to receive her diploma. The audience exploded in applause, not just polite applause, but a standing ovation, because everyone knew her story. Everyone knew about the poor girl who had opened an impossible safe and used the money to change the world. When the applause finally diminished, the director gestured for her to stay on stage. Luna, traditionally we ask the best student to give a brief speech. Would you mind? Luna hadn't prepared anything. But when she looked at the audience and saw her grandmother Maria in the front row, now 78 but healthy and smiling, she knew what to say. My grandfather died when I was 7, she began. He was a poor locksmith, never had much money, was never famous, never won awards or recognition. She paused. But he taught me something more valuable than anything I learned at this school. He taught me that you don't need to be rich to be valuable. Don't need to be famous to make a difference. Don't need a diploma to have wisdom. The audience was completely silent. When I was 10, I used what my grandfather taught me to open a safe no one could open. And that changed my life. Gave me money, opportunities, education. But more importantly, it gave me a mission. She looked at the other graduates. Each of you is going to leave here with opportunities. Some will go to expensive colleges, some to well-paying jobs, some will build companies. But I ask you to remember something. True success isn't what you accumulate, it's what you share. She pointed to her grandmother. My grandmother spent 50 years complaining that my grandfather wasted his life helping people for free. She wanted him to charge more, earn more, be more ambitious. But now, 23 years after his death, the work he wasted is changing thousands of lives. Luna felt emotion rise in her throat. So when you're deciding what to do with your lives, with your skills, with your talents, remember, you can build a fortune that dies with you, or you can build a legacy that lives forever. She descended from the stage under deafening applause. 10 more years later, Luna stood in the same corporate building where it all began. But this time, she wasn't on the 30th floor. She was on the 40th, where Mendez Incorporations maintained its boardroom. Dr. Ricardo Mendez, now 60 with completely white hair, presided over the meeting. And with that, he said, I conclude my time as CEO of Mendez Incorporations. It's been 40 incredible years, but the time has come to pass the torch. The board members murmured among themselves. Everyone knew this day was coming, but it was still emotional. My successor, Ricardo continued, is someone who knows true value. Someone who understands that business isn't just about profit, but about impact. Someone who will lead this company into a new era of social responsibility. He looked at Luna, now 28, sitting at the board table. Luna Almeida, do you accept the position of CEO of Mendez Incorporations? Luna swallowed hard. This was an enormous decision. The Pedro Almeida Foundation was thriving under new leadership. She had proven she could run a complex organization, but one of Brazil's largest companies? I accept, she said finally, with one condition. What? Ricardo asked, smiling because he already knew the answer. 50% of annual profits go to the Pedro Almeida Foundation and similar organizations. And every construction project the company undertakes must include affordable housing units for low-income families. The board sat in shocked silence. Marcos Tavares, still financial director, but much humbler after 2 decades of lessons, finally spoke. That's an enormous commitment. The shareholders will love it. Luna interrupted. Because we're going to prove you can be profitable and ethical, that you can grow and care for people, that wealth and responsibility aren't opposites. Ricardo banged the table. I accept on behalf of the company. Welcome, CEO Almeida. 20 years later, 40 years after that day on the 30th floor, Luna was 48 and one of the most respected business leaders in the world. Mendez and corporations had become a model for conscious capitalism. The Pedro Almeida Foundation had units in 30 countries. But what mattered most to Luna was a letter she'd just received. A letter handwritten by a 10-year-old girl named Esperanza from the Buenos Aires unit. Dear Luna, the letter said in Spanish, today I opened my first difficult safe. It took me 3 months, just like you. And when I finally opened it, I cried. Not because the safe was empty, but because I realized something. I'm not invisible. I have value. I can do impossible things. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for believing in children like me. One day, I'll do for other children what you did for me. Luna read the letter 3 times, tears flowing freely. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in a special box where she kept hundreds of similar letters. Her grandmother Maria, now 98 and still sharp as ever, entered the office using a cane. Another letter? Maria asked, smiling. Another letter, Luna confirmed. A girl in Buenos Aires. She opened her first complex safe. Maria sat, groaning slightly. Your grandfather would be so proud, not just of what you did, but of how many other Lunas you've created. I just passed on what he gave me. No, Maria shook her head. You took what he gave you and multiplied it by 1,000, by 10,000. You transformed a locksmith's lesson into a global movement. Luna went to the window, looking at the city below. Sometimes I still wonder, what if I hadn't gone that day? What if I'd given up when they laughed at me? But you went, and you didn't give up, because your grandfather taught you that value doesn't come from others recognizing you. It comes from you knowing your own worth. Luna smiled. He used to say, Luna, a lock doesn't open because someone believes you can. It opens because you have the skill. Others' belief is irrelevant. And you proved that, Maria said, time after time. To yourself, to me, to the world. They sat in silence for a moment, just enjoying each other's presence. Grandma, Luna finally spoke. Yes, my love. Thank you. For not throwing away Grandpa's notebooks. For letting me keep them under my bed. If you had thrown them away. I know. Maria interrupted gently. I know. And I'm sorry for all the years I didn't value his work. That I didn't see the treasure I had by my side. He knew you loved him. I know he did. But I wish I'd said it more. Wish I'd thanked him for living his values, even when it was difficult. Luna hugged her grandmother. You're saying it now. And he's listening. I know he is. Outside, the sun was setting over Sao Paulo, painting the sky orange and pink. And somewhere in the city, a child was learning to listen to the music of a lock. A child was discovering they had value. A child was opening not just a metal safe, but doors of possibility. And Pedro Almeida's legacy continued, passed from calloused hands to small hands, from generation to generation, from lock to lock, one transformed life at a time.